You know, it's been a long time since we could look at a Florida State wide receiver room and say, this is a Florida State wide receiver room, like the kind of Florida State wide receiver rooms I'm used to watching for years and years and years that are just churning out NFL type talent, guys that just scare the defense, beyond belief. Uh, the improvement in the wide receiver room last year was just huge.
It was huge. It was massive. It was like, where did this come from type deal? And it started in the offseason when we headed into the spring camp like we're doing now. Florida State made some moves in the transfer portal. And plus, the top player, or at least the one projected coming in, we didn't even get to see play in the 2022 season with Winston Wright Jr. from West Virginia. Didn't get to see him play, but still to see the production from the others that got some playing time, major playing time from Micah Pittman. A guy that can use his vision, kind of navigate through some holes here and there, and a physical, I think we kind of didn't expect as much, but a physical runner when the ball is in his hands. And I think he's a mix of a hybrid of a H-back. The guy can find holes. He's a nasty runner. He likes to be physical. And I really liked I really like both Jordan Travis and Micah Pittman. Definitely when you need short gains, just the kind of chemistry they had on some short passes early on last year. And then, Florida State, like I said, didn't have Winston Wright Jr. And, we're going to go into this spring. We're going to see, is he available to go? Is he going to be a full go? Is he going to be, kind of, I don't know, 50-50 on his participation like we saw all throughout the year? Because last year during the fall, he was either out there, he'd be catching passes one week, and then the next week he would not be catching passes, and the next week he'd be catching passes. So I think there was a lot of just rehab things that he had to go through in order to get back on track and get himself fully healthy, because Florida State is not going to put him out there unless he's good to go 100%. But just imagine if he's able to come in with this group that already proved that they can make that next step. Imagine making another step where you can get a guy that can block, you can have explosive plays going deep with him. You can use also Ja'Kai Douglas on the other side. He can blow off the top of off of that defense back there in that deep secondary. That's just something that Winston Wright Jr. with his speed can bring. But a nice pickup that Florida State was able to make last year before going to the spring. We'll see his availability. And then, of course, Johnny Wilson, someone that I was really high on going into pretty much fall camp after what I saw early on in the spring. I was like, yeah, this guy could be a problem. And sure enough, he was absolutely blowing up Oklahoma in the last game of the season for Florida State to get their 10th win. The size, the speed, I think too, I was underestimating this because I didn't really get to see this in practices. These guys aren't going to tackle each other 24/7, but to see him being able to get off tackles like that and have to have 2 or 3 defenders on him, that reminds me a lot of Kelvin Benjamin. If you go back to that 2013 year, specifically that UF game where he torched the Gators in Gainesville. Just get off me, clown. That's just kind of what Johnny Wilson brings to Florida State's offense, which they really like. And he's almost like a tight end size, which is wild to think of. And I know we're going to talk tight ends here soon, but a guy that is, like just everything. H-back, you can throw him outside, inside, on the line is going to be Jaheim Bell. And we'll specifically talk about him in the tight end group, but it's going to open up a lot of things too, I think, for Johnny Wilson specifically. You lose Ontario Wilson, Keyshawn Helton, we didn't get to see much of last year. And I'm interested to see who's going to step up here at the wide receiver room. You've got some freshmen who I know the star here with Hakeem Williams coming in, one of the top in the country. Mike Norvell and Ron Dugan's able to bring him in. That's going to be a threat, Mark, that I think we'll learn pretty early on what he's all about. And a sleeper pick for me is going to be Vondravius Jacobs, a guy that wasn't heavily recruited after. I think some teams that did their due diligence and did their homework on him were, kind of salivating at the tape that he put on. Elusive, smaller kind of wide receiver is going to need to put on a little bit of size. But after watching him in a few camps and going against some really good competition, Mark, I don't know. I'm really excited about at least the 2 freshmen. I know there's some others too, but these 2 specific, Hakeem and Vondravius Jacobs, I think they're going to show us a little sign of, hello, we got something to watch out for maybe in this 2023 year, if not most certainly in 2024.
Vandrevius Jacobs, a top 50 player out of in the state, out of Vero Beach. Another guy that you've brought up from time to time, and I was familiar with him from his days at Illinois. Do you think there's any chance Deuce Spann gets a look?
I think he will. I think he will. He's one that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, and for some reason in my head, I did not think Deuce Spann. I was trying to figure out who's going to be your speedy wide receiver with Ontario Wilson leaving, because that was a go-to when you're talking long shots, explosive plays. You go back to LSU game, you go back to a few others last season. Jordan Travis had liked going to pokey deep, and I was wondering who's going to fill that void. I really want to see Deuce Spann come in here and do that. We saw a lot of signs in spring and in fall camp, and I think there was a lot of competitiveness and also understanding the position, because he was initially a quarterback. He played a little bit of wide receiver, and then he transfers to play full-on wide receiver at Florida State. He's understanding the system. Takes him a little while, but if you want to talk freak athlete and speed, that's Deuce Spann, and I'd really like to see Florida State be able to mix him in with explosive players, just like Ja'Kai Douglas, who I think is going to be someone that Florida State is going to utilize a lot more. They had him at running back. Room is way too loaded. They move him out to wide receiver, and that's one guy that they used 2 years ago. If you go back to that Notre Dame game, Ja'Kai Douglas and Jordan Travis connecting very well. I want to see Deuce Spann and Ja'Kai Douglas be able to help out and help that void. But I do really like that. And you also got a guy like Joshua Burrell, who has dealt with injuries during the first couple of years of his career at Florida State, which stinks, but he's ended up staying at least going through spring camp. He's going to stay and compete and try to get into that rotation too. Really early signs, and it's saying a lot to do this. So if Anquan Bolding's watching this, just know I definitely want to see some more out of Joshua Burrell. But everybody kind of knows the body build and the catch style when you think of Anquan Bolding. He's a physical guy. He's not going to outrun you. He's not going to just blow out of your heels or anything. He's gonna go and make those contested physical grabs, and that's what I see out of Joshua Burrell. They've kind of mixed him in at running back too. I'm interested to see if he's going to stay in that kind of hybrid role like Ja'Kai Douglas was, but Joshua Burrell, keep an eye on him, and we'll have to see where Florida State is going to want to start him at beginning spring. I wouldn't be shocked to see that Florida State wants to keep him at running back, but his original position is wide receiver, so we'll see.
Logan, you already mentioned this guy, but even before you did, you had the phrase out there that you said, get off me, clown. And as soon as you made that phrase, you know who I thought of? I thought of Jaheim Bell.
Yeah.
Because this guy is like, I don't know if his game's ready, but he's like size, physicality, speed, the whole package. NFL, like he's got the body, the makeup for the next level. He's got it all.
I just think when Mike Norvell was looking at Jaheim Bell's tape, and I don't think he had to do much homework to find out what can I do with Jaheim Bell and my offense. And he had to have been like salivating. He had to get a bucket under him. I mean, it would be unbelievable to see what Mike Norvell is able to utilize him in, because he hasn't had a tight end with those kind of abilities, talents. You're losing Cam McDonald and this tight end room, Mark, and I'm looking at it like, okay, Cam McDonald, you kind of knew what you were getting out of Cam going into this last year, the year before, but you haven't had a game changer since maybe you could throw in maybe Izzo, but of course, Nick O'Leary. Jaheim Bell is a different kind of tight end, though, like we were talking about earlier, is you can use him in the back. You put him out to the side. You put him on the outside. You put him on the line. That's just kind of what he brings. And I think it's going to be a trio tight end group this year. It's going to be Jaheim Bell. It's going to be Kyle Morlock. And I don't want anybody to forget about Marqueston Douglas, because we kind of shocked us a little bit too. And we were wondering, during spring, we saw the weight loss too for Marqueston Douglas, losing, I don't know how much it was, like 30 pounds, something like that. Maybe even more of that. He just got in so much better shape. And we saw Jordan Travis go to him quite a bit, and also could run with the ball too. His nickname called Biscuit, which was pretty funny. He's a big guy that likes to eat, but he worked on his body a ton. And I'm interested to see Coach Storm's Florida State strength and conditioning coach, Mark, be able to work with his body another go around this offseason and see how Florida State's able to use him. We had our guy, Brian Stork, who 2013 national champion, best friends with Nick O'Leary, Florida State's best tight end, and practically history. He talked about how much he liked Marquiston Douglas and how much he thinks Florida State should utilize him quite a bit more. So adding him into the combination of Jaheim Bell, Kyle Morlock, who's more of, I would say, your traditional tight end, kind of a hybrid, definitely a freak athlete, thinner guy, but tall. You put them alongside Johnny Wilson, and it's like, what the heck? This isn't fair whenever you get into the red zone. You kind of add that trio together, and I just think Coach Thomason, Florida State's tight ends coach, and Mike Norvell just have whiteboards left and right around their offices trying to figure out how they can just absolutely bully and piss off defenses whenever they're putting their game plans together throughout the week.